Æthelflæd, also known as the Lady of the Mercians, was a remarkable ruler in early medieval England, recognized for her leadership and military prowess. She was the eldest daughter of King Alfred the Great of Wessex and Queen Ælfwynn, and was born around 870 AD. Æthelflæd rose to prominence as one of the most effective leaders of her time, governing the Anglo-Saxon Kingdom of Mercia during the early 10th century. Æthelflæd grew up during a turbulent period when Viking invasions posed a significant threat to the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Her father, Alfred the Great, played a pivotal role in defending Wessex against the Vikings, and his reign set a foundation for Æthelflæd's future leadership. In around 886, Æthelflæd married Æthelred, the Lord of Mercia, creating a powerful alliance between Wessex and Mercia. This marriage aimed to strengthen the Anglo-Saxon resistance against Viking incursions and consolidate power between these influential regions of England. After Æthelred died in 911, Æthelflæd assumed control of Mercia. Unlike typical gender roles in the period, she was referred to as the Lady of the Mercians rather than a queen. Æthelflæd's relationship with her husband, Æthelred, Alderman of Mercia, is a subject of interest primarily because of the unique nature of their political partnership. While the details of their personal relationship are sparse, the political and military dynamics of their marriage are clear. Æthelflæd and Æthelred's marriage was more than just a union between two individuals. It was a strategic alliance that had profound implications for the history of Anglo-Saxon England. Their partnership played a key role in the resistance against the Viking invasions and the consolidation of power in the mid-9th and early 10th centuries. Æthelflæd, the daughter of Alfred the Great, was married to Æthelred, the Alderman of Mercia, in the late 9th century. At the time of their marriage, Mercia was a kingdom under threat from Viking invasions. The marriage likely served as a political alliance between the powerful West Saxon and Mercian kingdoms. Mercia, which had once been one of the dominant Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, was weakened by years of Viking raids. Æthelred's marriage to Æthelflæd not only solidified the bond between the kingdoms of Wessex and Mercia, but also created a united front against the Viking threat. Æthelflæd's father, Alfred, was instrumental in securing the marriage of his daughter to Æthelred, as it strengthened the position of Wessex and Mercia in the ongoing conflict against the Viking forces. The marriage was therefore an alliance that benefited both parties, as Æthelflæd brought with her the influence of Wessex, and Æthelred, a nobleman of Mercia, helped maintain the traditional power base in the Kingdom of Mercia. One of the most significant aspects of Æthelflæd and Æthelred's relationship was their shared commitment to defending Mercia against Viking incursions. Æthelred, though an able warrior and military leader in his own right, often found himself in poor health, which is thought to have limited his ability to lead his forces effectively. As a result, Æthelflæd often took on the role of leading campaigns on behalf of her husband and acting as a de facto ruler of Mercia. Her military leadership during this time was a key factor in her ability to hold the kingdom together and repel Viking attacks. The couple's joint military campaigns were crucial in the defense of Mercia. Æthelred and Æthelflæd, with the support of their forces, participated in the significant Battle of Ashdown in 871, where the West Saxon army, under Alfred the Great's leadership, defeated the Vikings. Though Æthelred's personal participation in this battle is not well documented, the partnership between Wessex and Mercia ensured the defense of Anglo-Saxon territories. Æthelflæd, as a strategic military leader, would have helped command the forces of Mercia during these campaigns. While Æthelred was not as actively involved in military leadership due to his health, Æthelflæd's skills in warfare and defense of the kingdom were vital to the survival of Mercia. In the absence of her husband's full physical participation, Æthelflæd's role was indispensable, and their marriage allowed Æthelflæd to command authority and take the lead in protecting their kingdom. Following Æthelred's death in 911, Æthelflæd took full control of Mercia as its ruler, a position she held for the remainder of her life. Her transition from a supportive wife to a ruler in her own right further emphasizes the partnership that she and Æthelred had forged during their marriage. Æthelflæd's governance of Mercia was marked by her ability to maintain and even expand the kingdom's influence despite the ongoing Viking threat. She effectively became the Lady of the Mercians and ruled with a combination of political and military acumen, demonstrating the trust Æthelred had in her capabilities as a leader. The power dynamics within their marriage reveal that Æthelflæd was not merely a passive partner. She was an active participant in her husband's leadership and a significant contributor to the success of Mercia's defense. Æthelred, while officially the ruler, likely recognized his wife's talents and gave her considerable influence in decision-making. Æthelflæd's eventual role as the Lady of the Mercians after Æthelred's death was not a sudden shift, but rather a natural progression of the influence she had already established during their joint rule. Following Æthelred's death in 911, Æthelflæd took full control of Mercia as its ruler, a position she held for the remainder of her life. Her transition from a supportive wife to a ruler in her own right further emphasizes the partnership that she and Æthelred had forged during their marriage. Æthelflæd's governance of Mercia was marked by her ability to maintain and even expand the kingdom's influence despite the ongoing Viking threat. She effectively became the Lady of the Mercians and ruled with a combination of political and military acumen, demonstrating the trust Æthelred had in her capabilities as a leader. The power dynamics within their marriage reveal that Æthelflæd was not merely a passive partner. She was an active participant in her husband's leadership and a significant contributor to the success of Mercia's defense. Æthelred, while officially the ruler, likely recognized his wife's talents and gave her considerable influence in decision-making. Æthelflæd's eventual role as the Lady of the Mercians after Æthelred's death was not a sudden shift, but rather a natural progression of the influence she had already established during their joint rule. While Æthelflæd's role as a ruler after her husband's death is the most well-documented part of her life, it is clear that her marriage to Æthelred helped shape her as a leader. The partnership between Æthelred and Æthelflæd was not merely a political arrangement, but a true alliance, built on mutual respect, trust, and shared responsibility for the survival of Mercia. The marriage produced a legacy that extended beyond their lifetimes. Their daughter, Ælfwynn, briefly succeeded Æthelflæd as the ruler of Mercia, although she was soon displaced by Edward the Elder, Æthelflæd's brother. Despite this, Æthelflæd's influence remained significant, and her efforts to build fortified towns and strengthen Mercia's military infrastructure laid the groundwork for the eventual unification of England under her nephew, Æthelstan. In many ways, Æthelflæd's marriage to Æthelred exemplified the importance of strategic alliances during a time of great political instability. Their relationship was characterized by cooperation, mutual support, and shared goals. Æthelflæd's leadership after her husband's death demonstrated that her capabilities went far beyond the traditional role of a wife, and that the partnership between them was one of profound significance. Æthelflæd and Æthelred's relationship, while not extensively documented in historical texts, was a partnership rooted in political necessity, military collaboration, and mutual respect. Æthelflæd's leadership, both during her husband's life and after his death, speaks to the strength and effectiveness of their union. Her ability to take control of Mercia and lead it to military victories and territorial expansion was a testament to the trust that Æthelred had in her, as well as her own competence and capability as a ruler. The political and military accomplishments of Æthelflæd and Æthelred's marriage contributed significantly to the history of Anglo-Saxon England, cementing their place in the annals of history as one of the most effective and enduring partnerships of the time. Though she effectively ruled as one, she retained power independently rather than merely acting as a consort or regent for a male heir, which was unusual for the era. Her brother, Edward the Elder, had succeeded Alfred as King of Wessex, and together they continued their father's mission to unify England and resist Viking incursions. Æthelflæd's fortification of Mercian towns was a foundational element of her military strategy against the Vikings, reflecting her foresight in using defensive architecture as a means to secure Mercia and establish a stable infrastructure. Her efforts were part of a broader defensive network known as the system, a concept pioneered by her father, Alfred the Great, in Wessex. Æthelflæd expanded and adapted this strategy to meet Mercia's unique needs, ensuring that her kingdom could withstand attacks from Viking forces and assert dominance in the region. The term burh refers to a fortified town or settlement. Burhs were strategically located along Mercia's borders, in key river valleys, and along major trade routes to serve several purposes. The fortified towns offered protection to inhabitants during Viking raids, allowing them to seek shelter within the walls. Burhs were designed not only as defensive structures, but also as hubs for trade, governance, and military organization. By centralizing economic activity and administration, Æthelflæd could ensure that resources and troops could be quickly mobilized to repel any threats. The construction of fortified burhs solidified Æthelflæd's authority over Mercia. These structures represented her power and her role as protector, boosting morale and fostering a sense of unity among the Mercian people. Located on a steep hill overlooking the River Severn, Bridgenorth's position was ideal for defensive purposes. The Severn Valley was a crucial route for trade and communication, and the fortification of Bridgenorth ensured control over this vital corridor. The strategic location enabled Æthelflæd to monitor and restrict Viking movements along the river, making it harder for raiding parties to penetrate further into Mercia. Bridgenorth's high elevation and commanding views offered natural advantages, which Æthelflæd capitalized on with walls and earthworks. Stafford was an important market town and a natural defensive site due to its proximity to the river, so Æthelflæd ordered the construction of fortifications in Stafford around 913 to safeguard Mercia's northwestern border. Stafford's fortifications allowed her to establish a stronghold near Viking-controlled Northumbria and provide a base for launching campaigns into Danelaw territories. The establishment of Stafford as a fortified town also encouraged settlers, which further bolstered Mercia's population, economy, and military capability in the region. Tamworth, often regarded as the royal capital of Mercia, was already significant, but Æthelflæd reinforced its defenses to elevate its military role. Located near the border with Danelaw, Tamworth was of particular strategic importance in Æthelflæd's campaign against Viking-controlled areas. Its fortifications protected Mercia's heartland and acted as a launch point for offensives against Viking settlements. By strengthening Tamworth's defenses, Æthelflæd made it clear that Mercia's central authority was resilient and poised to challenge Viking influence in the region. Although Chester was not originally within Mercia, Æthelflæd expanded her influence to include it by fortifying the town. Chester was situated near the Welsh border and provided a stronghold that protected Mercia from incursions by both Vikings and the Welsh. Chester's fortifications were extensive, involving both earthworks and stone walls. This investment ensured control over the surrounding area and opened new opportunities for trade with Welsh kingdoms, enhancing Mercia's economy and diplomatic influence. Æthelflæd's construction efforts included earthwork ramparts, timber palisades, and stone walls in larger settlements. The walls surrounding these burhs were typically reinforced by ditches and embankments that created multiple layers of defense against Viking sieges. Æthelflæd's use of burhs demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of military architecture, likely influenced by the Roman forts and towns that still dotted Britain at the time. She not only fortified existing settlements, but also established new ones, creating a dense network that provided Mercia with a reliable defensive grid. The fortified towns significantly impacted both the Viking and Mercian societies. For the Vikings, the network of burhs made traditional raiding tactics far less effective. A Viking force would need to either bypass or lay siege to fortified burhs, which required significant resources and manpower. This shift in strategy frustrated the Vikings' ability to capture easy loot and forced them into costly confrontations that drained their forces. For Mercia, the burh system fostered urban growth, economic development, and population stability. The security provided by these towns encouraged trade and drew in settlers who contributed to the regional economy. The burhs became centers of learning, commerce, and administration, reinforcing Mercia's social and political cohesion. Æthelflæd's strategy had far-reaching effects, laying the groundwork for a more urbanized and organized society, where communities were less isolated and better equipped to resist external threats. Æthelflæd's efforts to fortify Mercia were instrumental in her success as a leader, and are widely credited with preserving Anglo-Saxon rule in central England. By creating a web of defensible locations, she helped to secure Mercia's independence and set the stage for the eventual unification of England under her brother, Edward the Elder, and later her nephew, Athelstan. The effectiveness of her defensive strategy left a lasting legacy in England's military infrastructure and governance. Historians often recognize Æthelflæd's burh network as a significant factor that enabled the Anglo-Saxons to resist Viking domination and contributed to the foundation of a unified English kingdom. In the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Æthelflæd's achievements are celebrated, particularly her successful campaigns and fortifications. Chroniclers, including Asser, who documented her father's reign, and later historians like William of Malmesbury, praise her as an astute ruler who understood the importance of both military power and the social stability that fortified towns could provide. Her legacy is evident in the continued use of these fortified sites well into the medieval period, underscoring her enduring impact on England's historical and cultural landscape. Æthelflæd's victory over the Vikings in Derby in 917 marked one of her most significant military achievements and was pivotal in reclaiming territory from Norse control in the Danelaw. As Lady of the Mercians, Æthelflæd led numerous campaigns against Viking forces in the early 10th century, directly challenging the Norse rule established in northern and eastern England. This victory over the Vikings showcased her military acumen and contributed to the slow but steady unification of England. Derby was one of the 5 boroughs of the Danelaw, along with Leicester, Lincoln, Nottingham, and Stamford. These boroughs were strongholds established by the Norse settlers who had established control over large areas of England in the late 9th century. The Danelaw itself was an extensive territory in which Norse law and customs prevailed. The 5 boroughs were strategically positioned and heavily fortified, serving as centers of Viking power and control over the surrounding regions. Derby was a particularly valuable target because it lay near the border of Mercia and the Danelaw, making it a frontier town that controlled access to Mercia's heartland. Capturing Derby would weaken Viking influence in Mercia and disrupt the cohesion of the Danelaw. Furthermore, Derby's location along the River Derwent provided a strategic advantage for both transportation and defense, which made it a crucial asset for either side in the struggle for dominance. By 917, Æthelflæd's forces were well prepared for a major offensive against the Vikings in the Danelaw. Æthelflæd coordinated her campaign carefully, likely consulting with local Mercian lords and strategists. While her brother, Edward the Elder, was campaigning in the south, Æthelflæd focused on the north, leading an aggressive push against Viking strongholds. Her campaign included not only Derby, but also several other key locations across the Danelaw that were strategically targeted to dismantle Viking control. The recapture of Derby was one of the hardest-fought battles in Æthelflæd's campaigns. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Æthelflæd's forces had to overcome intense resistance from the Vikings entrenched in the town. Unlike other towns where Viking control had weakened, Derby had a formidable defense, and the Vikings there were well organized and committed to retaining control. The Chronicle notes that Æthelflæd suffered losses in her forces, including the deaths of 4 of her thanes, noble warriors loyal to her cause, signifying the fierceness of the conflict. One of the lesser-known aspects of Æthelflæd's campaign in Derby is her use of a strategic and multi-pronged assault to minimize the need for a prolonged siege, which would have strained her resources and manpower. It is believed that Æthelflæd's forces used a combination of surprise attacks, siege equipment, and tactical positioning to breach the Viking defenses quickly. Some historians suggest that Æthelflæd may have utilized knowledge of the local geography to her advantage, coordinating with Mercian scouts who knew the landscape intimately and could help plan effective routes of attack. Another intriguing aspect of Æthelflæd's approach was her ability to foster alliances with local English leaders in the Danelaw who may have been willing to support her efforts against the Vikings. This diplomatic approach would have provided her forces with additional support, supplies, and knowledge about the region. By strategically undermining Viking cohesion within the Danelaw, Æthelflæd could weaken the morale and unity of Viking defenders, making her victory in Derby both a military and psychological blow to the Norse in the region. The capture of Derby in 917 was a landmark achievement in Æthelflæd's campaign against the Danelaw. This victory was significant for several reasons. The fall of Derby sent a powerful message to Viking settlers and neighboring regions. It demonstrated that the Anglo-Saxon resistance, under leaders like Æthelflæd, was a serious threat capable of dismantling Norse rule in England. It signaled the beginning of the end for the Danelaw's dominance in the Midlands. Derby's capture emboldened Æthelflæd and encouraged her to launch additional offensives in the region. Following Derby, she continued to target other Viking strongholds, including Leicester, which surrendered without significant resistance, likely due to the psychological shock from Derby's defeat. Æthelflæd's success at Derby and her broader campaign significantly contributed to the unification of England. By weakening Viking influence in the Danelaw, Æthelflæd and her brother Edward the Elder laid the groundwork for a unified English kingdom. Æthelflæd's campaigns ensured that Mercia would play a central role in this unification process, making her one of the crucial figures in early English nation-building. The reconquest of Derby and other towns allowed for a resurgence of Anglo-Saxon culture and governance. Anglo-Saxon law and customs were reinstated, and towns like Derby were revitalized as centers of trade and administration under Mercian control. Æthelflæd's victory at Derby left an enduring legacy that would influence later rulers in their quest to unify England. Her successful campaigns inspired her nephew Æthelstan, who would go on to become the first king of a united England. By reclaiming territory from the Vikings, Æthelflæd helped to strengthen Anglo-Saxon identity and laid a lasting foundation for the defense and consolidation of English lands. This victory also exemplifies how Æthelflæd broke traditional gender roles, leading her people in battle and making strategic military decisions that would traditionally have been reserved for a king. She earned the respect of her soldiers and people, as well as her adversaries, which contributed to her lasting legacy as one of England's earliest and most influential female leaders. Æthelflæd's campaigns against the Vikings, and particularly her success at Derby, were instrumental in reshaping the political landscape of England. Her military skill, courage, and strategic foresight mark her as a leader whose impact on English history is both profound and enduring. Æthelflæd's capture of Leicester, following her success at Derby, was a critical milestone in her campaign to reclaim land from Viking control and dismantle the Danelaw's influence over central England. Leicester was another of the 5 boroughs, strongholds of Viking power within the Danelaw that controlled large swathes of northern and eastern England. Leicester's strategic location, economic importance, and symbolic value made it a formidable Viking center, and Æthelflæd's efforts to secure it showcased her skill as both a strategist and a diplomat. Leicester held a vital position along the River Soar, a tributary of the River Trent, which served as a key transportation route for goods and troops. Its location allowed the Vikings to monitor and control movement through the Midlands, giving them access to trade routes and making Leicester one of the region's most fortified towns. As one of the 5 boroughs, Leicester had strong defensive structures, likely including a combination of timber and earthen walls with watchtowers, making it a challenging target. Æthelflæd understood that securing Leicester would not only cut off Viking influence in Mercia, but also encourage surrounding areas to submit to Anglo-Saxon authority. With Derby already reclaimed, taking Leicester would help create a contiguous Anglo-Saxon territory, reducing Viking capacity to launch counterattacks or raid from within central England. Unlike the battle-hardened resistance Æthelflæd faced in Derby, the capture of Leicester in 918 was notably bloodless. This is a fascinating and lesser-known aspect of her campaign. Rather than a battle, Æthelflæd achieved victory in Leicester through a strategic show of strength combined with diplomatic negotiation. Her swift victory at Derby had weakened Viking morale, and her forces were well prepared to lay siege to Leicester if needed. However, seeing the formidable strength of Æthelflæd's army and her previous successes, the Viking leaders in Leicester opted to surrender without significant conflict. Æthelflæd's willingness to accept surrender, rather than insist on a violent confrontation, illustrates her tactical flexibility. By allowing the Viking leaders to surrender, Æthelflæd avoided unnecessary bloodshed and ensured the city's infrastructure remained intact. This approach won her respect and facilitated the smooth reintegration of Leicester's inhabitants under Anglo-Saxon rule. After securing Leicester, Æthelflæd extended her influence further by capturing Gainsborough, a strategic settlement in Lincolnshire. Gainsborough's capture was especially significant because it lay within the territory of the Danish Northumbrians, who remained a formidable Viking force in the north. Gainsborough controlled access to the River Trent, making it an essential stronghold for securing Mercia's northern borders. Taking Gainsborough allowed Æthelflæd to monitor and restrict Viking movement along the river, creating a defensive buffer between Mercia and the Danelaw territories further north. Her success at Gainsborough highlighted her capacity to adapt her tactics for different regions and settings. While Leicester's surrender had been achieved through negotiation, Gainsborough required more decisive action. Æthelflæd's forces likely undertook a swift military strike, seizing control with minimal damage to discourage any significant Viking reprisals. Her victory here sent a strong message to Viking leaders throughout the Danelaw, warning them of the expanding reach of Anglo-Saxon rule. One lesser-known aspect of Æthelflæd's success in Leicester and Gainsborough was her ability to secure alliances with local Mercian leaders who had lived under Viking rule but were still loyal to Mercia. These local lords provided critical intelligence about Viking movements and defenses, enabling Æthelflæd to coordinate her efforts with a high degree of precision. Their support minimized the need for prolonged sieges and helped Æthelflæd quickly bring towns under her control. Unlike traditional conquering strategies of the time, Æthelflæd did not impose harsh rule over the towns she reclaimed. Instead, she restored local governance and law, re-establishing Anglo-Saxon customs and religious practices. This helped build loyalty and cooperation among the inhabitants, many of whom were Anglo-Saxons living under Viking rule. Her approach fostered stability and facilitated the smooth transition of Leicester and Gainsborough back into Mercian governance. Æthelflæd's campaign was supported by a corps of trusted noblemen and military commanders who helped her execute strategies and maintain control over captured territories. Æthelflæd maintained a strong network of thanes, noble warriors, who were loyal to her personally, which was crucial in a society where loyalties were often split among local rulers. These loyal thanes helped garrison newly captured towns, preventing any immediate Viking attempts at reoccupation. Æthelflæd's capture of Leicester and Gainsborough represented more than mere territorial gains. It marked a decisive shift in the power dynamics of England. Her success in reclaiming these Viking strongholds set the stage for the unification efforts led by her brother Edward the Elder and later, her nephew Athelstan, who would become the first king of a united England. By securing control over key towns, Æthelflæd helped to weaken Viking influence and paved the way for a single Anglo-Saxon kingdom. The political and economic effects of Leicester and Gainsborough's capture were equally important. With these towns now part of Mercia, Anglo-Saxon law and Christian customs could be re-established, contributing to the cultural and religious integration of the region. The population of these towns benefited from the stability provided by Mercian rule, which likely led to an increase in trade and prosperity, further strengthening Mercia's position in the region. Æthelflæd's achievements at Leicester and Gainsborough illustrate her unique leadership style, which combined military prowess with diplomacy and local engagement. Her approach to governance, focusing on integration and respect for local traditions, won her admiration among her contemporaries and respect from future generations. Chroniclers such as William of Malmesbury praise her leadership, noting that she was both a warrior and a wise ruler whose efforts contributed greatly to the unification of England. In capturing Leicester without bloodshed and securing Gainsborough to control Viking activity in the north, Æthelflæd demonstrated a nuanced understanding of military strategy and the importance of local alliances. These victories, alongside her other successes, cemented her reputation as one of the most effective rulers of early medieval England and an indispensable figure in the creation of a unified English kingdom. Æthelflæd's diplomatic efforts with the neighboring Welsh kingdoms were instrumental in securing Mercia's stability and influence. Following her father Alfred the Great's approach to diplomacy, Æthelflæd maintained and expanded Mercia's alliances, understanding that external stability was key to achieving internal strength and security. Her diplomatic acumen allowed her to create bonds that buffered Mercia against Viking incursions and expanded Mercian influence across the region, making her not only a military leader, but also a skilled stateswoman who foresaw the importance of unity among the Anglo-Saxon and Welsh kingdoms. Æthelflæd's father, Alfred the Great, had established a foundation of respect and mutual support with several Welsh kingdoms, notably those in South Wales. This connection was critical in maintaining peaceful borders and in gathering allied support against Viking raids. Æthelflæd's marriage to Æthelred of Mercia further solidified Mercian political ties, but after Æthelred's death, it was Æthelflæd who took on the mantle of leadership, not only in Mercia, but in maintaining these diplomatic bonds. Recognizing the need for solidarity among the Anglo-Saxon and Welsh territories to resist Viking encroachment, Æthelflæd fostered alliances that went beyond typical feudal relationships of the time. Rather than treating the Welsh as mere subordinates or tributaries, Æthelflæd cultivated relationships based on mutual benefit and respect, ensuring that the Welsh kings saw Mercia as a protector and ally rather than a rival. Æthelflæd's diplomacy is particularly notable with the kingdoms of Gwynedd and Powys in North and Mid Wales. These areas bordered Viking-controlled lands, and a unified front was essential for defense. Historical records, such as the Annals Cambriae, Welsh Annals, and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, highlight instances where Welsh kings provided military support to Æthelflæd in her campaigns against the Vikings. In return, Æthelflæd offered them security assurances and the promise of Mercian assistance against their own enemies. Her alliance with the Welsh ruler Hywel the Good, King of Deheubarth in South Wales, is an example of her effective diplomatic strategy. Hywel was known for his own reforms and unification efforts in Wales, and the mutual respect between him and Æthelflæd helped create a cooperative relationship that lasted beyond her lifetime. This alliance with Hywel was particularly influential as it united Mercia with a strong and organized Welsh kingdom, allowing both regions to focus on mutual Viking threats rather than border conflicts. Æthelflæd strategically used religion to strengthen her alliances. She supported church-building efforts within Mercia and encouraged missionary work into Welsh lands, which created a shared religious culture that transcended political borders. Some historians suggest that Æthelflæd's patronage of religious sites, such as the church at Gloucester, attracted Welsh pilgrims and established her as a pious and benevolent ruler, fostering goodwill across the border. By presenting herself as a pious Christian ruler, Æthelflæd appealed to the Welsh leaders' sense of shared religious duty, emphasizing that their alliance was in line with Christian ideals of unity and peace. Although not as well documented as some of her military achievements, Æthelflæd likely facilitated marriages between Mercian and Welsh nobility, solidifying ties through kinship. This practice was common in medieval diplomacy, as marital alliances created a sense of family loyalty that was crucial in maintaining peace. While specific details are scarce, several historians believe that Æthelflæd's daughter, Ælfwynn, may have been engaged or allied with Welsh nobility, a strategic move by Æthelflæd to ensure continuity in these alliances. Æthelflæd's diplomatic strategies with the Welsh kingdoms included what we might recognize today as shared defense agreements. By agreeing to provide mutual aid in times of Viking raids, Æthelflæd and her Welsh allies ensured that neither side would be left vulnerable. Æthelflæd's military prowess likely served as a reassurance to her allies, showing them that Mercia was a reliable and strong partner in defending their lands from Viking aggression. Æthelflæd also used economic incentives to strengthen her diplomatic relations. Mercia's growing market towns were centers for trade, and Æthelflæd encouraged commerce with Welsh kingdoms by ensuring safe passage along trade routes and allowing Welsh merchants access to Mercian markets. This boosted the economies on both sides and increased Welsh reliance on Mercia as a trade partner, deepening the interconnectedness between Mercia and the Welsh kingdoms. Æthelflæd's diplomatic relations with the Welsh kingdoms greatly strengthened Mercia's position against the Vikings and bolstered its influence in the region. The alliances she fostered not only provided Mercia with additional military support, but also created a network of protection and loyalty across regional borders, an unusual achievement in a period marked by frequent inter-kingdom rivalry. By ensuring Welsh support, Æthelflæd created a buffer that prevented the Vikings from exploiting divisions between the Welsh and Anglo-Saxons. The Welsh lands served as a natural defense barrier, making it harder for the Vikings to penetrate into central England without encountering united opposition. Æthelflæd's success in maintaining Welsh alliances contributed to her reputation as a unifier and respected leader across Anglo-Saxon England. Her political model was later emulated by her nephew Æthelstan, who sought to unite all of England, including Welsh and Scottish territories, under his rule. Æthelflæd's legacy as a stateswoman thus laid an important foundation for subsequent rulers, inspiring them to adopt diplomacy over conquest when possible. Æthelflæd's alliances fostered a period of cultural exchange between Mercia and the Welsh kingdoms. The two regions shared religious practices, architectural styles, and even elements of law and governance. This helped integrate the Welsh more closely into the Anglo-Saxon cultural sphere, paving the way for future unification efforts. Welsh chroniclers even respected and documented Æthelflæd's achievements, an unusual acknowledgement from an often rival region. Æthelflæd's diplomatic achievements are often overshadowed by her military successes, but her legacy in fostering alliances with the Welsh kingdoms was no less critical. Her ability to maintain peace and cooperation in a politically fragmented landscape set a precedent for later English kings. Chroniclers like William of Malmesbury, who wrote about Æthelflæd generations later, praised her for her wisdom in securing Mercia's borders and maintaining good relations with her neighbors. In her alliances, Æthelflæd demonstrated a forward-thinking approach that recognized the strength of cooperation over conflict. Her diplomatic model, focused on alliances, mutual respect, and shared interests, helped create a lasting stability that extended well beyond her rule. Æthelflæd's alliances with the Welsh set the stage for an Anglo-Saxon England that could stand unified against external threats, a vision that her nephew Æthelstan would bring closer to fruition in the decades that followed. Æthelflæd's diplomatic work in securing alliances with the Welsh kingdoms was a strategic move that fortified Mercia and contributed to the larger goal of unifying England. Her use of religious and economic incentives, shared defense strategies, and kinship ties illustrates her skillful and forward-looking approach to diplomacy in a time when the region was fragmented by war and Viking invasions. Her achievements in fostering these alliances underscore her legacy as one of the earliest and most effective diplomats in English history. Æthelflæd's devotion to Christianity was a cornerstone of her rule, influencing not only her personal life, but also her policies and the legacy she left in Mercia. A devout Christian, Æthelflæd prioritized the promotion of Christianity in her kingdom, seeing it as both a spiritual mission and a means of uniting her subjects under a shared faith. Her father, Alfred the Great, had placed significant emphasis on the spread of Christianity and the establishment of religious institutions, and Æthelflæd continued this legacy with her own initiatives to build and restore churches, monasteries, and other religious institutions across Mercia. Æthelflæd's faith was central to her identity as a ruler. Her dedication to Christianity went beyond personal belief. She saw it as a moral duty to strengthen Christian influence, protect religious sites, and support the work of the Church. Unlike many secular rulers of her time, who may have been content with merely offering material support to religious leaders, Æthelflæd actively participated in religious observances, cultivated close relationships with church leaders, and took a hands-on approach to fostering Christianity in her territories. One of her most significant religious contributions was her support for the church in Gloucester, which she and her husband Æthelred turned into an important religious center. Æthelflæd and Æthelred jointly founded the minster at Gloucester dedicated to Saint Oswald, a Northumbrian king and martyr, who was highly venerated in Anglo-Saxon England. The establishment of this minster was a strategic move as much as it was a religious one. By honoring a saint widely respected by both Mercians and Northumbrians, Æthelflæd strengthened a sense of religious and cultural unity in Mercia. Æthelflæd's commitment to Christian architecture extended to the construction and restoration of multiple churches and monasteries throughout Mercia. Establishment of St. Oswald's Minster marked one of her most notable achievements in supporting Christianity. By placing the relics of St. Oswald within the minster, she created a pilgrimage site that drew visitors from across the region. The minster not only became a place of worship, but also a symbol of Anglo-Saxon piety and resilience. Æthelflæd dedicated resources to ensure the church's construction was of high quality, and it remained a prominent religious site well beyond her reign. Æthelflæd is believed to have restored several monasteries that had been abandoned or damaged during Viking invasions. The Viking raids of the 9th century devastated many religious communities, leaving churches in ruins and religious practices disrupted. Æthelflæd prioritized the restoration of these sites to revive the religious and cultural life that monasteries offered. Monasteries were not only places of worship but also centers for learning, art, and manuscript preservation, all of which contributed to the Christian and cultural revival Æthelflæd championed. Beyond major religious sites, Æthelflæd invested in smaller local churches, recognizing the importance of accessible places of worship for her subjects. By establishing and supporting rural churches, she helped bring Christianity closer to the common people, fostering religious unity and making Christian rites, including baptisms, weddings, and burials, available to a broader population. This was particularly important in a time when isolated communities often struggled to maintain contact with larger religious institutions. Support for Christianity extended to the encouragement of learning and literacy, a tradition inherited from her father's focus on education. Alfred the Great had made strides in translating religious texts into Old English, making Christian teachings more accessible, and Æthelflæd continued this emphasis on literacy within Mercia. By supporting monasteries and churches, which were centers of learning, she ensured that religious education remained strong in her kingdom. Monks and clergy were able to continue transcribing religious texts, expanding the availability of Christian knowledge and teachings. Æthelflæd's support for religious literacy helped cement Christianity not only as a belief system, but as a cultural framework that permeated daily life in Mercia. Clergy trained at these religious centers would travel and preach across the kingdom, teaching Christian morals, values, and practices to both nobility and commoners. This helped reinforce the shared values of the Mercian people, contributing to a sense of unity and moral duty within her territory. Strategically promoted Mercian religious sites as pilgrimage destinations, particularly Gloucester, where St. Oswald's relics were housed. By establishing Gloucester as a pilgrimage site, she drew visitors, including clergy, nobility, and commoners, from across Anglo-Saxon England and beyond. This influx of pilgrims not only strengthened Mercia's economy, but also increased its religious prestige. Gloucester became a place where Christians from different regions could gather, reinforcing Mercia's position as a significant Christian center. Religious patronage served diplomatic purposes as well. By promoting Christianity, she strengthened her alliances with other Christian rulers, including her Welsh allies and Northumbrian supporters. Religion was a common cultural bond that Æthelflæd used to maintain peaceful relations and to negotiate alliances. Her religious endeavors helped align her kingdom's interests with those of other Christian leaders in the British Isles, creating a sense of solidarity against the common threat posed by the Vikings, who were generally seen as pagan invaders. Æthelflæd's support for Christianity extended to the commissioning of religious art and manuscripts, though few physical records survive today. Chroniclers suggest that she may have sponsored the creation of illuminated manuscripts and other forms of religious art that could be used for teaching Christian stories and values. Such manuscripts would have been instrumental in spreading Christian doctrine, especially in a largely illiterate society. Manuscripts, adorned with religious iconography, were also valuable symbols of faith that Æthelflæd could gift to other rulers, reinforcing alliances. Æthelflæd's dedication to Christianity had profound and lasting effects on Mercia and the wider Anglo-Saxon world. Her support for religious institutions and infrastructure not only preserved Christianity in Mercia, but also reinforced the region's cultural identity as a Christian kingdom. The churches and monasteries she supported provided a continuity of faith and learning that strengthened Mercia's social fabric, allowing it to stand firm against external threats, particularly from Viking incursions. Her religious contributions also provided a foundation for future rulers who would continue to see the value in supporting the church as a means of social cohesion. Later kings, including her nephew Aethelstan, continued to build on the Christian infrastructure that Æthelflæd had fostered, recognizing its role in unifying the realm under a shared belief system. Æthelflæd's efforts ultimately contributed to the later successes of these rulers in unifying England under a single Christian monarchy. Æthelflæd is remembered not only as a warrior queen, but as a deeply pious Christian leader whose commitment to the faith left an enduring mark on Mercia. Her support for Christianity extended beyond mere political gain. She genuinely believed in its power to guide her people and to create a stable moral society. Chroniclers and religious figures of her time praised her piety and dedication, often portraying her as a model of Christian virtue. Her legacy as a Christian patron is evident in the institutions that survived her, particularly the minster at Gloucester. Even after her death, the influence of her religious reforms continued to shape Mercian society and beyond, helping to secure a lasting place for Christianity in English history. Æthelflæd's efforts not only preserved the faith through tumultuous times, but also laid the groundwork for a Christian England, one that would emerge more unified and resilient against future threats. Æthelflæd's death in 918 marked the end of an influential era for Mercia. As Lady of the Mercians, Æthelflæd had played a pivotal role in defending Mercia from Viking invasions, reclaiming lost territories, and fostering alliances that strengthened Anglo-Saxon resistance against Norse domination. Her efforts not only secured Mercia's independence during her lifetime, but also laid crucial groundwork for the eventual unification of England. Following Æthelflæd's death, her daughter Ælfwynn briefly succeeded her as the ruler of Mercia. Ælfwynn's succession represented an attempt to continue her mother's legacy and maintain Mercian autonomy. However, her rule was short-lived. Within a few months, her uncle, Edward the Elder, deposed her and absorbed Mercia into Wessex. This marked the end of Mercia as a semi-independent kingdom and a key step in Edward's efforts to consolidate the Anglo-Saxon territories. Her daughter, Ælfwynn, briefly succeeded her, though Edward the Elder eventually absorbed Mercia into Wessex, uniting the territories. This unification under Edward was part of the broader movement toward the eventual formation of a unified English kingdom. Æthelflæd's contributions were instrumental in shaping the path toward English unification, as she reclaimed large portions of territory and safeguarded Mercia's independence during her lifetime. Historians have long debated the extent of Æthelflæd's influence due to limited records, but her accomplishments and impact on English history remain widely recognized. Chroniclers of the Anglo-Saxon period, such as the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, mention Æthelflæd with respect and admiration, emphasizing her leadership qualities. Additionally, sources like William of Malmesbury's Gesta Regum Anglorum attest to her effectiveness as a ruler and a warrior. Æthelflæd's rule as Lady of the Mercians is now seen as a period of resilience, strategic governance, and military success. In a time when female rulers were rare, she earned her place as one of the most significant figures of early English history and played an indispensable role in shaping England's early political landscape. Here are many unknown and interesting facts about her life and legacy that reveal her extraordinary contributions to English history. Æthelflæd grew up at the court of her father, Alfred the Great, during a time when he prioritized education and literacy. Unlike many women of her era, she was likely well-educated, familiar with classical texts, theology, and military strategy. Alfred's court was a hub of intellectual activity, and Æthelflæd's upbringing in this environment likely shaped her as a learned and capable leader. Æthelflæd is one of the few women in medieval history to lead armies. She personally oversaw military campaigns, including the decisive recapture of Derby and Leicester from Viking control. Her role as a battlefield leader was exceptional for a woman in the 10th century and underscores her tactical genius. While Æthelflæd was officially co-ruler with her husband Æthelred, Alderman of Mercia, he suffered from ill health later in life. This allowed Æthelflæd to take on an increasingly prominent role in governance and military leadership, effectively making her the ruler of Mercia long before his death in 911. Although her father Alfred is often credited with the development of the fortified town system, Æthelflæd expanded it significantly across Mercia. She fortified towns like Bridgenorth, Stafford, and Tamworth, which became crucial defensive and administrative centers. This network helped protect her kingdom against Viking raids and supported economic growth. Æthelflæd's campaigns against the Vikings directly contributed to the eventual unification of England. By reclaiming territory in the Danelaw, she weakened Viking influence and strengthened Mercia's alliance with Wessex. Her efforts laid the groundwork for her nephew Æthelstan to become the first king of a united England. Æthelflæd maintained strong diplomatic ties with Welsh rulers, securing their support against the Vikings. This alliance was unusual, given the historically fraught relationship between Anglo-Saxon kingdoms and Wales. Her ability to unite these groups speaks to her diplomatic skill. Æthelflæd was deeply religious and supported the construction and restoration of churches and monasteries. She is especially remembered for founding and endowing St. Oswald's Minster in Gloucester, which housed the relics of St. Oswald, a Northumbrian king and Christian martyr. This act reinforced her kingdom's Christian identity and attracted pilgrims. The name Æthelflæd comes from Old English roots, with Ethel meaning noble and flæd meaning beauty or grace. Her name reflected her status as a royal and her qualities as a respected leader. Despite her power and influence, Æthelflæd never adopted the title of queen. Instead, she ruled as the Lady of the Mercians, Mercna Hlefdich. This title emphasized her unique position as a female ruler in a predominantly male-dominated era. Æthelflæd was likely directly involved in planning military campaigns, a rare role for a woman at the time. Her strategies included fortifying key towns, cutting off Viking supply lines, and launching surprise attacks. Her victory at Derby, one of the 5 boroughs of the Danelaw, was particularly impressive and dealt a significant blow to Viking control. One of Æthelflæd's most remarkable achievements was her ability to rule a major kingdom without facing significant internal opposition. In a time when female leadership was almost unheard of, her reign was marked by stability, which is a testament to her leadership skills and the respect she commanded. Æthelflæd maintained a cooperative relationship with her brother, Edward the Elder, King of Wessex. Together, they coordinated efforts to reclaim Viking-controlled territories. Their partnership was instrumental in the gradual unification of England. Æthelflæd's rule stands out as one of the few examples of female leadership in early medieval Europe. Her ability to lead armies, govern effectively, and maintain alliances with other kingdoms set a precedent for future women in positions of power, though her example was rarely followed in the male-dominated Anglo-Saxon world. Æthelflæd passed away in 918, shortly after securing Leicester from Viking control. Her death marked the end of an extraordinary reign, But her legacy lived on through her daughter Ælfwynn, who briefly succeeded her as ruler of Mercia. Æthelflæd's daughter, Ælfwynn, inherited the title of Lady of the Mercians, but ruled for only a few months. Edward the Elder, Æthelflæd's brother, annexed Mercia, ending its independent rule. This action effectively consolidated Wessex and Mercia, accelerating the process of English unification. Æthelflæd was interred at St. Oswald's Minster in Gloucester, the church she had founded. Her burial there highlighted her piety and enduring legacy in Mercian Christianity. The site became a place of pilgrimage, and her memory was honored for generations. Medieval chroniclers, including the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, praised Æthelflæd's wisdom, bravery, and effectiveness as a ruler. Unlike many women of her time, she was remembered not for her family connections, but for her achievements in governance and warfare. Despite her remarkable contributions, Æthelflæd's story has often been overlooked in favor of her father, Alfred the Great, and her brother, Edward the Elder. Recent scholarship and popular culture, including books and TV series like The Last Kingdom, have helped bring her story to a wider audience.